Hello and welcome to Empowered to Thrive. I am so happy to have you all here with me. And I know that you have a lot of ways you could be using your time. So the fact that you're tuning in, taking time out for you is something that I applaud. And I'm also so pleased, so excited to have my friend and um, Father Chris with me today. And I just want to take a moment to introduce Father Chris to you. He is a Franciscan friar and Catholic priest who is trained as a spiritual director. He has extensive experience with helping people navigate emotions in their spiritual life. And Chris and I have become friends. We originally met years ago at a conference, and it was one of those moments where I guess some people are just very easy to be drawn to. And Chris, you have this personality and way about you that just makes, I feel like people in general, and I'll speak for myself, somebody feel really safe to be with you. And it was so easy to connect with you and to have conversation when I didn't even know you before that moment.
Yeah, thank you. And I remember quite well meeting you and Evan, your husband, and just seeing the relationship that you guys had and seeing how unique you guys are in terms of your love for each other. And I remember that still quite well. I called you guys heart and soul. So
Did. Yes, I remember you gave me that note card that had heart and soul on it one time. It's those little things that I hold on to, and every once in a while I see it, and it reminds me, which also speaks something of you because you see the deep parts of who somebody is. You're not just going to look at the surface of somebody. You're not going to take them, at what we call maybe face value. Like you see so much more. And I personally find that very validating when anybody, sees more than just the externals and you are skilled at that.
yeah, thank you. I I'd say that some of that is also probably what connected us because I also look for people who see um, deeper within people rather than just you know a friar who a Franciscan friar who was not having a very good day that day at the conference when we met. I still remember that you came and you prayed with me and then we just formed a friendship after that. So
Yeah. What a great segue into our conversation because today we're going to talk about how emotions and having emotions is so normal, common. It's a part of being human, no matter what our titles are, no matter what our spirituality or religious affiliations are. And that's what there, right there, you said, just I was having a tough day. And, we take the clothing off and we take the titles off of somebody and then we look at them and we realize, wait, we're all human. We all have feelings. We all have emotions. We have stories, life stories. And all of this needs to be welcome, even in churches, in worship settings. So feel free to take us and into this conversation that you wanted to bring up. It's something that's super close to my heart also. How do you navigate, you know, welcoming emotions and talking to other people about how emotions are very normal when in churches sometimes we're taught only positivity is okay or only gratitude is okay. How do you navigate that?
that's one of the things that's major on my heart as well is helping people to recognize that one can over spiritualize their emotional life and make it seem like or feel shame that they either experience anger or sadness or frustration or these kinds of things.
Mm.
Oftentimes people will come to me and they'll say that they lost patience, and I would say to them, well, what happened? Did you hit somebody? Did you scream at them? Did you call them names? And they said, no, I just felt irritated. And I said, well, then it sounds to me like you didn't lose your patience. You actually kept patience because of the fact that you suffered something. And I think sometimes people assume that the word patience means being dead to any feeling, like not having any feelings of being irked or anything like that. And so that's one of the things that, especially, from coming from a Catholic and a Christian perspective,
Mhm.
I'll help people to understand the difference. One of the things too that I think is a key thing is anger. Just feeling anger in general, which if one is feeling irked, that's a flavor of anger.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's important to distinguish what spiritual teachers teach versus what people interpret it as. So, for instance, again, this is coming from a Christian perspective, though I'm sure it could apply to other people as well who aren't necessarily Christian. Jesus said not to be angry at one's brother, that is, not to direct the anger at the person, but he never said don't be angry. In
Mhm.
fact, St. Paul mentions in one of his letters, he says, if you are angry, let it be without sin.
Mhm.
And so we look at that and we recognize anger can be very powerful and life-giving emotion when it's directed properly. Anger looks to protect us from what is evil or to protect somebody else from what is evil, and it looks to strive after what is good. That's the root of it anyway. That's its natural design. And we see that in scripture as well, because in the beginning in Genesis, God says to the serpent, He says, I'm going to put enmity against you, between you and the woman, between her offspring and your offspring. So that means that's where we're supposed to take that fight against evil or evil incarnate, like the devil and that kind of a thing. Um, and so that's a very powerful thing that one can do, is to oppose evil and to seek after what is good, to protect what is good. And that's what anger is about.
Mm.
I, I think sometimes, too, when we look at anger and forgiveness, I think sometimes people think that if they feel any anger, that they haven't forgiven. And I keep reminding them, no, you got layers of things that are going on there. And the one thing is there's a wound. And if there's a wound from what somebody has done or what somebody has experienced from other people, anger looks to protect the goodness of the person. So the anger is just saying, there's a wound and I want to protect.
Mhm.
Forgiveness is a decision to not necessarily hold the other person to a strict justice account.
Mm.
And that doesn't mean that one won't feel anger, because the anger again is connected to the wound. So that's where we then have to go in there and whatever practice one would use. I mean, again, from a Christian perspective, I would take the wound to Jesus and instruct other people who are of the same spiritual ilking to take the wound to Jesus to be healed, so that then the anger dissipates, so that they may still remember what happened and maybe, have boundaries with whoever it was, but at the same time, their anger will have dissipated because the wound has been healed.
Mhm.
So, and that's one of the things I deal with a lot too with people when it comes to giving advice or spiritual direction is to recognize that difference, that forgiveness is a choice for the person on the one hand, um, and that if they experience anger still, that's not necessarily the lack of forgiveness.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, something you said reminded me of an interaction with one of my kids this week. You talked about how we don't have to direct that our anger doesn't need to be directed at other people, that the idea of sin can come in when if we're projecting our anger onto somebody. And I feel like first off, how important it is that we acknowledge I feel angry. It's not actually the other person at all. We may they may have done something that was an injustice, that was inappropriate, that was completely and absolutely wrong, but it's our feelings we need to own.
Right.
And so personalizing it is always very important and empowering. So my son was up past his bedtime, and I thought he had already been in bed. He comes down and says, "Hey, like when do I need to go to bed? I've been, playing this game on my phone for a long time." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, I feel so angry right now." Like basically, I had a conversation with him. I thought he knows the the end time and he didn't respect the boundary. What I recognized was, first off, and it doesn't mean always the time, but this particular time, I stated, I feel very angry. I didn't rage about it. I didn't do anything, you know, otherwise with my anger that would be towards him. And I witnessed myself in this interaction because I realized how different that is than some of the interactions I've had where other people are angry, and that might mean they're going to go to hit me, they're going to yell at me, they're going to start shaming me or blaming me because they feel angry. And my son, I also was observing, kind of like as this is all happening, right? Like I'm also looking at it from the outside in a sense and observing, okay, his facial recognition, like he doesn't look afraid. He doesn't look, he's just hearing what I'm saying. And the point wasn't for him to feel shamed, for me to project all of my feelings onto him. I was acknowledging, though, huh, we had an agreement. I feel angry that here you are disregarding the agreement. On the flip side, he did at least come down and say, I think I've been on this for a long time. Is it time for me to go to bed? I mean, I appreciated that on the other side of it.
It's honest. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So anger, it's so important that actually it doesn't always get this projection onto someone else, that they're the reason I'm angry. Oh, yeah, maybe they did something that pushed against a boundary. Maybe they did something that was completely wrong and it was towards us. And I'm not minimizing that. But when we own our own feelings, there's a lot we can do with them.
Right.
And then anger doesn't also mean somebody else gets hurt, somebody else feels terror. Like feeling anger does not mean we are reacting with some other behaviors that then become very detrimental.
Right. Those would go towards wrath.
Okay.
Yeah. Those detrimental things like proxy violence, hitting something else or slamming something else, or even getting into uh, demeaning language or physical hitting. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, oh, by the way, that sounded like a victory. Like I wanted to celebrate that so much. Like,
Yeah, it really did.
yay.
It's true. Like I felt like, oh, I can feel anger this way and it not be a big deal. And also, there wasn't a buildup because when there's a buildup, I'm not going to respond that way. And I'm not sitting back saying we don't ever need to like feel the anger in our body and release it. I think the adrenaline, the things that we feel naturally, there is ways that we need to, scream into pillow, punch a pillow, go out and take a run, you know, shake, whatever. Like there's things we need to do sometimes. I didn't feel all of that in that moment, but I did recognize that I felt the anger that so many years I suppressed. I never let myself feel angry. I didn't even know I felt angry. And I had to come to a place, and maybe you can expound on this for yourself, where I started giving myself permission to acknowledge this is anger I feel, and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a big eye-opening experience when I was in Italy because I grew up also where in a situation where it was like things would build up and then there'd be explosions of anger, and those explosions would be scary because
Mhm.
I'd be scared. And I remember living in Italy, and in Italy, um, I love the Italians because as a culture as a whole, they can be very expressive about how they're feeling. And I saw this one guard of the Vatican. He wasn't one of the Swiss guards. He was just one of the police who was supposed to help manage one of the entrances. And there was this big to-do going on that day at St. Peter's. And he had so many people at his gate. And there he was on the phone telling off his superior. And and when I say telling off, he was just expressing what the situation was, and he was angry. And he said something that I thought was very key. He said, "Because I respect you, I tell you." And
Mm-hmm.
that was mind-blowing to me.
Mm.
That respect means being able to have that confrontation without necessarily demeaning the other person, just explaining this is what the situation is, and it's completely untenable, and we need more help here, is basically what the guy was saying. And then he said, "Because I respect you, I tell you." And and I realized it's true. If one doesn't respect another person, one's not going to share their feelings with them. But if one does respect another person, well then then there's that chance to be able to have that conversation and to express one's feelings and have them, be respected for what they are. And they're basically just messengers. They tell us
Mm-hmm.
basically what's going on and what the situation is. And
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, that was an eye opener for me. And I think because of that, I then had to work on myself to recognize that, gee, there are times when I would get angry, but I wouldn't express it or I wouldn't allow it because of the fact that I felt ashamed, or I thought that because I was angry that somehow I was sinning, or
Mm-hmm.
that kind of a thing. And I'm so glad that at least the I'm the kind of person who, even if other people would tell me, well, this is like you're not supposed to be doing that, I'm going to be looking for what like is actually said in the experience of like the saints
Mm-hmm.
and the experience of people who came before. And I remember reading um, in one of the writings of Saint Ambrose, and he talks about how the Psalms are a perfect place in Scripture to go to for just every single feeling is present in them. And sometimes all you need to do is find the right psalm. That's if one feels like one has to do something religious in order to express it, that one can express one's feelings there in the Psalms. So that was a start for me, at least, was to be able to say, okay, here's something safe that I know I can do. And so in my own private prayer time, I would take some of the Psalms and I would just make sure that I felt the feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was very important for my maturation and my growth.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could say that I'm perfect at this, but I'm like everybody else. I'm just practicing, you know, and the practice makes perfect, they say. So
Right. And the humility and being willing to model something and share openly like you are is tremendous. We actually, I think it creates a sense of safety when somebody says, I haven't mastered it all. I haven't figured it all out, but I'm on the journey. I'm putting in the intentional effort and I'm going to model because I'm not going to just say this is what you should do without practicing it myself. What a beautiful thing that is.
I remember one instance, a story of a time when I experienced personal victory where I realized I didn't take anger out on the person. I
Mhm.
was driving down the highway one day, and somebody decided that they were going to brake check me. And like, there was no reason for them to slow down to begin with, and I wasn't going that fast anyway, but they just decided that they were going to. And all of a sudden, I said, "What the heck are you doing?" I didn't say heck, but still, at the same time, I realized I hadn't directed it, I wasn't directing at the person. I wasn't saying, um, I wasn't calling them names. And it was very mindful afterwards to just bless the person afterwards, you
Mhm.
know, because Jesus said, bless and do not curse. That's what we're called to do, is to bless. Um, so, um, and I knew that the person, they tried to like track with me for a little bit and were probably trying to get me to react somehow. But I decided not to. It was just
Yeah.
the action that the person had done was dangerous. It put me and them in danger. And so my reaction in the spur of the moment was against the action.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I even shared that in a homily one time, and people laughed that, I admitted that I maybe hadn't used the best of language, but at least I hadn't directed it against the person. So
Yes, yes. Uh, the beauty of a leader being transparent and genuine and having a heart that desires what is pure is I can't even put it into words right now, but the feeling that I have is like safety. And I want to acknowledge that and that I appreciate so much that you as a leader in the church, you are modeling that for us and living that out because so much hurt and so much pain comes through leaders who are living a double life. I mean, we know in general that's painful. We understand that it doesn't matter if it's our aunt, if it's our parent, if it's, whoever, our friend. Uh, Being two-faced is never something that goes without consequence. And it deeply hurts the people affected. But then, because a leader then has a further reach and more influence, when they are saying one thing and doing something different, the pain that it causes people is devastating. So thank you for being one person, one leader who is creating the ripple effect that it creates when you're doing the opposite, when you're being honorable.
I never thought of it that way. Thanks for that because that's that's precious. The thing I know has to be one has to be very careful, especially as a leader in some kind of a, in whatever situation one is,
Mhm.
and so as not to cause spiritual abuse. You know,
Mm,
that's that's one of the things that's major on my heart of like not trying to force people to conform to a particular pattern or, to a particular mindset. I mean, we have obviously there's a moral code and whatnot, and there's guidelines, but not to then say, oh no, you can only pray this way, or you can only pray that way, or you can
mm,
only experience these emotions. I think that can be very detrimental, I think, to people because then there's this idea that they have to be perfect in church,
mm.
and that's not what we're there for. I jokingly say we're all practicing Christians or practicing Catholics, and not perfect ones yet. So
Yes, yes,
the idea is we're gonna keep going until the Lord helps us make it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, how do you find what ways do you find it to help people? Especially, I know I've partaken in some of your in some of the seminars, the Change Radically seminars. How do you help people with their feelings and what do you focus on the most?
So it's very important to me that people actually get to own that they have feelings and get to feel them in my presence. That there is a sense that we don't just have to talk about it, we actually can feel it. And because I believe through acknowledging and then feeling, we can move through it. And so, um, sometimes people will talk about the emotion of rage or sadness. And I'll stop the conversation and say, like, okay, if you feel comfortable, can you actually feel that? Can you go back to that place where you're telling me about the story, but can you feel what you felt in your body in that moment? And when they feel comfortable to do that, and they do, then we work with, okay, now we're actually present with what's going on in the body.
Right.
And I'm going to acknowledge the, I'm going to validate and acknowledge what I sense is going on deeper. Oh, I see, I hear. You're so hurt. You're being You're being judged, you're being misunderstood. I know that's not what you meant. I'm so sorry that they couldn't hear, that they didn't realize. And, we kind of walk through a process where they hopefully their inner parts and who they are as a person gets seen in that moment, gets met in that moment. And there's so many times in life, what's going on inside, nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to acknowledge. And we're in a room of people, and it's like, whoa, does anybody see me? Does anybody notice? My heart's work is to meet with people in those moments because I believe time is so relative. We can be present, but we can experience something that happened in the past as if it's as at the present moment. And the body remembers. So what you felt in the past, your body can remember right there in that moment. And
Right.
so to meet someone in even their past experience and be able to create a sense of safety and belonging, a sense that I am known, somebody sees me, someone cares. That is my goal whenever I am conversing with somebody, having a session with them, because I believe healing happens when we know someone notices, somebody cares. They don't have to fix it, but to be noticed and known and accepted and loved for whatever we're feeling in that moment is healing and transformative.
This is true. Yeah, it really is. And I remember partaking in one of your group sessions one time. And I remember I was dealing specifically with a lot of loss. I was mourning a lot of different losses. And I remember in one of the sessions, I think you took some time to kind of just counsel me in particular because you were looking for volunteers and I think it just happened to be that way. And I just remember how much I appreciated just being heard, being accepted that you weren't saying, "Oh, shake it off," or you're supposed to be rejoicing or that kind of a thing. I think that that's one of the things too that I think can get over spiritualized sometimes is that people think that sadness is the same thing as losing one's deeper joy, but actually sadness is just it's it's something temporary to be acknowledged and to be processed and worked through and sometimes we need help with that. And I know I did at that time. So I know I'm very grateful to you for what you do and change radically because I think it's very key for people to have um, someone they can talk to who is just present to them and will love them where they're at. And that's one of the reasons why I nicknamed you Heart. So because it just seems to represent your personality in terms of both somebody who can be very uh, what's the word, outgoing and bold, but also at the same time um, compassionate uh, and welcoming. So,
Mm. Yeah, thanks. I was reflecting recently how much I enjoy children, very young ones too. And then I thought to myself, "Oh, so much of my work is meeting adults, but meeting their inner child, the little
mm,
kid they used to be." And it lights me up because I so often feel like kids, they kind of get put in this different category of human, instead of just being looked at as they're a human and they're just a younger age, but like they need to be treated well and given attention and not expected to be a grown up yet because they're not a grown up. And even the way the brain develops and what we know, we can't reasonably expect things of a child that we can expect of an adult. And um, we often, it seems like we excuse childish behavior sometimes in adults, and yet we don't even allow children to be children. And so I just realize how passionate I am, but really, I love people, but I really do gravitate towards children. And then I realized, well, what do you know? I actually do work with a lot of the child in each one of us.
One of my favorite memories is coming over your house one time and watching you interact with one of your kids. And I think I'm not going to put the your one of your daughter on the spot. I don't remember which daughter it was, but I just remember that she came in and she wanted something and she tried to throw a little bit of a tantrum about it. And you said, "Well, you can be mad, but that's not that's not proper behavior, the other kind." And I said to myself, "Wow, she was given permission to feel her feelings
Mhm.
and to be mad,
Mhm.
but just not then the boundary was put on there. You're not allowed to throw the tantrum or to throw the to 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 get it into a different perspective there, like to not go that far in expressing the anger." So
Right, right. Feel your emotions, and there's still limitations for safety reasons or whatever. And I think it takes a lot of, um, as parents, doing the inner work, getting grounded, and being comfortable in ourselves is so important in being able to parent our children in this opposite way. Because I've definitely gotten backlash. I've had a lot of people come to me or say to me like, what? Like that sort of idea, what you just brought up, where they are like, I'm not comfortable. I don't think that's right. What's going on here? And in a sense, critical of my parenting. But I know the longer I'm on the journey that I'm just becoming more and more confident in, well, this is how I do it. This is actually what I believe is the best for my child. And you can have a different opinion. It doesn't actually need to affect me, where I don't even have to feel badly about how I parent. I don't have to feel shame about how I parent because I'm just grounded in this is this is what I feel 100% sure of. And um, it's a process because not everybody applauds it like you do. But I certainly sit back and reflect and know that's what I needed as a child and didn't receive. So, in order to break the cycle and heal the generational trauma, I must do something differently.
and that's key. And I remember you saying that some resources that were helpful for you and Evan were Danny Silk's some of his things out there, like some of his books, like The Culture of Honor.
Probably, yes, I've definitely read some of Danny's books and appreciate them. And yeah, yeah.
So I still have my copy of it. I need to get it out and read it. But I mean, I know that the principles are pretty similar in terms of like things that just honor people to be able to mourn or to be angry or to be sad, however it is that they experience those things. And I think one of the things for me that was helpful too was also some therapy too, because there they were teaching me that owning emotions and being able to verbalize them appropriately is very healthy. And that's one of the things I think that at least in spiritual settings and church settings, that they gets overlooked sometimes unless there are people involved who understand and have that awareness of psychological health and emotional health and seek to promote it.
Yeah, and I would say not just even overlooked, but a lot of shame. I mean, I've had blatant statements made, about how therapy is wrong or that's not what Christians should do. So it is the point you're bringing up is so refreshing because it is important to have resources outside
Right.
that help us to really move in the direction we're all meant to move. I think Jesus modeled feeling emotions and responding to emotions. And, one of the things I say often is I know a lot of people that are regularly attending churches and whatnot just wouldn't like Jesus. When we really look at who Jesus is and what he modeled, um, there's a lot of things that people are bringing up, like directly to me, that I'm like, wow, like, well, Jesus did that. So, and maybe that's here nor there. It's a comfort to me that again, us being grounded and tuning in to the voice that we know as the voice of God speaking to us, and resting back in that. When, yes, there's going to be oppositional voices. They're going to be sometimes from the people we love so much, that love us so dearly. And we just always have to go back to this place of what what am I confident of? It doesn't mean it won't change. It'll change. Like what we believe in one moment, what we're certain of in one moment certainly can change. But we're only responsible for ourselves. And we need to be able to be sure that we feel this is what is honoring and right for me. Other people can disagree with it, but they won't answer for us and we won't answer for them.
Right. Right. What you mentioned about Jesus modeling emotions for us too reminds me of this movie I saw one time, and it was one of the Gospels. Basically, it was word for word the gospel being presented, and it's the scene where Jesus comes down from the mountain of transfiguration, and he asks them, what are you all arguing about? And the disciples and one of the father of this epileptic boy mention what's going on. And in the movie, it makes it seem like Jesus was so peaceful or so calm when he says, "O faithless generation, how long must I be with you?" And
Mhm.
I said, that doesn't look like the man who overturned the tables in the temple with the money changers, or whipped, it was a whip of cords, but still drove the animals out with a whip of cords, to get them out of the temple. Now, I'm not saying that this then gives us permission to act in whatever fashion we want, but I think that it does at least allow us to express frustration and to express our normal feelings. I mean, because I don't think that Jesus was, because Jesus also experienced a senses of like abandonment at times, sorrow.
Mhm.
And it even says in the gospel that he was sorrowful even unto death. And so, he knows the full range of our human experience, and he can guide us in the proper understanding of those feelings and the proper utilization of them, because they're God-given gifts for us. So,
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of shows, though, I, I love the Chosen series, because you too, because I feel like it articulates things that my spirit knows. I remember one of the scenes where they show up in the synagogue and the interaction that transpired and the way they filmed it. I'm like, oh my God, they know me. Like, I'm like, they get what I've experienced in the church. And there's so many different parts of the Chosen series that if you're listening and you're like, what's the Chosen series? Go check it out, because I personally think they've done a really great job of putting on a screen what my heart knows.
Yeah, it's powerful. And to even show some of the disciples having to struggle with their own feelings in the middle of like loss,
Oh, definitely.
uh, the joys, the you name it, the challenges. So I really like the fact that it's not saccharine, as we would call it, like artificial sweetener,
Mhm.
because
Yes. Yes.
it becomes more real, you know. And
Correct.
the actors, I think, do a really good job. The actors, the actors and actresses, they really portray, you know, it's not easy to be somebody who believes, and it's not for the weak of mind at all, because there's there's so much we experience, and sometimes we can even and this I think is goes into some of the emotional health as well. We can even sometimes feel sad or angry toward God at times.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that some people shy away from that because they think that they're not allowed to have these feelings. But at the same time, I think um, we're we're told, you know, in Scripture, I think that Jesus he he prayed in such a way where he was in travail. So certainly Jesus prayed in such a way that he would you know experience the fullness of all his feelings. Um, and we hear him, you know, on the cross even experiencing what would be, you know, at least from the point of view of maybe his um, uh, sensing the presence of the Father. My God, why have you abandoned me? He says, you know, of course, theologically he wasn't abandoned, but emotionally he was feeling abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think again, that's one of those spiritual nuggets of the Psalms of that we can really get into those and experience how we, you know, first maybe start in one place with our feelings and then end in another place where we're remembering the goodness of God, we're remembering His promises, and it helps us to not to dismiss the feelings, but to process through them and to let um, that word have the last statement, which is, you know, praise of God for the different things that He has done. Just the other night, I was praying. I was saying to God, "Listen, God, I need direction because if you don't give me direction, how am I supposed to do Your will?"
Mm-hmm.
So one of my prayers that I pray often, and I was a little bit frustrated because I was saying, you know, God, I understand like um, I don't expect you to be talking to me all the time, but like now would be a good time to kind of give me some sense of now that I'm in a new assignment, I'm in a new place. For those who don't know,
Yeah.
that I just got transferred, and and while that's all exciting and good, it's also throws things up in the air because then I have to say to myself, now, how am I called to be a Franciscan and a priest in this particular parish in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, so I was frustrated with the Lord. I was also grateful for past times that He had led me and given me direction, and I was remembering those, and I'm saying, okay, Lord, He may not be giving me what I want when I want it, which is fine, because otherwise I'd get spoiled. But but at least um, at least I can both feel the feeling of frustration and tell you I'm frustrated with you, but then also remember, hey, you have led me in the past. I'm grateful for that. Please do it again.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Well, and that reminds me, if we so often, and I think it was in the shack that I initially heard this, but so often on the face of God, you know, we've masked it with the face of our parents or somebody else that was really important and influential in our life. And we might think, oh, all of my expression of emotion isn't okay when it comes to my relationship with God. But if we experience somebody in human form that allows us to have our emotional expression, even towards them, and they're able to handle us expressing ourselves, and they're able to handle hearing how they feel hurt by us and whatnot, and we just allow that, I think it does become easier then to even believe and conceptualize the idea that this is okay in the relationship we have with God.
Mhm.
And when we haven't ever experienced a human who allows us to say, I am so hurt by you, and this, da, 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 and they don't react, but they allow us to express. They want to understand, oh, how did I hurt you? And they want to actually, change the pattern so we're not continually hurt by them if it's a legitimate thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
It becomes easier to believe, wait, this is how it could be with God. And because I completely second the fact that, yes, we are able to express ourselves fully. This should be the safest relationship we have because this is the one who said, I want you. I want you to have life. I want you
Yep.
to exist. I like who you are in all the places, in all the forms, forever and ever. And I say that so fully feeling it. But when it's just head knowledge, it is actually harder to express ourselves. It has to go from head to I know that in my heart. I experience that. And that's not me like shaming anyone, but also there's going to be a disconnect if all the things we've heard in church, we just know them and we haven't experienced them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because how can we experience God as the comforter if we don't show up as our authentic self?
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So. Well, we could clearly keep going on and on and on, but for sake of time and your time and everyone listening, I'm gonna bring this all to a close, but maybe we can converse more in the future because this is great and I've been enjoying it so much. So thank you, Father Chris, for opening yourself up, letting us in, letting us hear from you and learn from you, and being so down to earth about it. Like to me, this type of conversation is something that anyone listening can take something from and do something with it. And that's always my hope. It's always my challenge to each of you listening. Don't just listen. Take one thing, one tiny thing even from what we've talked about, and do something with it. And that's where change starts to occur in the practice. So as we close, is there anything you wanted to say as we sign off to those listening?
I think that what you said is most important because we can be stuck in our culture that likes to exalt knowledge, but knowledge without understanding and knowledge and understanding without the wisdom of actually acting upon what we have learned and understood, um, it becomes useless. So those that I think that that's very important, like what you said, to take something and to act upon it is key. So, and that's my wish for everybody else too. And I want to thank you for what you do in creating safe places for people to be their authentic self and to grow and to heal. So, thank you so much, Corrine.
You're welcome. And for anybody that wants to connect with Father Chris outside of this space, it'll be in the show notes, but his Instagram handle is FR Chris, CHRISOFM. So please take advantage. And what you heard today is who he authentically is. This is what you get when you interact with Father Chris Gaffrey. So thank you again for being here and for everybody listening. I will look forward to seeing you next week. And remember that there are those of us, I for one, who are so glad that you are alive. So, in any moment where you question, is it worth it? Should I continue on? Yes, 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 yes. There are those of us who are cheering for you. And if you need a safe place to talk about how you're really doing, please reach out. Reach out to either one of us, reach out to someone else you know, because your life matters. And there is so much purpose. There is so much for you to get to enjoy about living. So if right now you feel like I am not enjoying this life, there is another way, and reach out to somebody who can help you get to a place that feels lighter and easier. It's possible. Much love, my friends.
Take care.